Revered and respected by our ancestors for thousands of years, demonized and suppressed by the war on drugs, and now at the dawn of a new millennia, they are making their triumphant return. Scientists, researchers, and patients alike are exploring these ancient therapies to heal modern ailments. And we're here to bring you the latest in scientific research, cutting-edge practices, and first-hand experiences from those who have been transformed in body, mind, and spirit by plant medicines from cannabis to psilocybin to ayahuasca and beyond. This is the Plant Medicine Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Plant Medicine Podcast. I'm Dr. Lynn Marie Morsky, your guide on this journey. And today I am very happy to bring you part 3 of the 3-part trilogy of episodes with Dr. Julie Holland. And today we are going to be discussing establishing safeguards for psychedelic therapy. Now, if you're not yet familiar with Dr. Holland, Dr. Julie Holland is a psychiatrist specializing in psychopharmacology with a private practice in New York City. Her book, Weekends at Bellevue, chronicles her 9 years running the psychiatric emergency room as an attending physician on the faculty of NYU School of Medicine. Frequently featured on the Today Show and CNN's documentary series Weed, Holland is the editor of The Pot Book and Ecstasy, The Complete Guide. Both books are nonprofit projects that help to fund clinical therapeutic research. Dr. Holland is a medical monitor for several MAPS PTSD studies utilizing MDMA-assisted psychotherapy or testing strains of cannabis with varying CBD to THC ratios. She has worked for decades on U.S. drug policy reform based on harm reduction principles. Her 2016 book, Moody Bitches, The Truth About the Drugs You're Taking, the Sleep You're Missing, the Sex You're Not Having, and What's Really Making You Crazy, has been translated into 11 languages. Her most recent book, Good Chemistry, The Science of Connection from Soul to Psychedelics, was published in June 2020. Holland sits on the scientific and medical advisory board of several cannabis and psychedelic corporations. So for those of you who have joined us for the past 2 episodes with Dr. Holland, you know that we started talking about psychedelics and the science of connection. We moved on to talking about psychedelics and antidepressants and how to taper off antidepressants if that's something you should be feeling called to do. And today's episode, we have a conversation where we bring up topics that don't yet have any good answers. And those topics revolve around how to safeguard the patients who are going through psychedelic therapy when there isn't yet a governing board for psychedelic therapists, and what we hope that type of governing body in the future is able to do. And then in the end, Dr. Holland even gets into a little bit of discussion that harkens back to our week 1 conversation about the chemistry of connection, but about how to stay in or get in to the parasympathetic state, which is the rest and digest and connect, and which facilitates learning and social bonding and all those good things. So I think it's a lovely way to round out this series. Now, just a reminder that nothing in the Plant Medicine Podcast is to be construed as medical or legal advice. This is for educational and informational purposes only. And one last reminder that if you are a clinician or you know a clinician you would like to share this with who would like to learn more about psychedelics, please head on over to psychedelicmedicineassociation.org. We at the Psychedelic Medicine Association, it is our mission to help clinicians on the front lines learn about the currently available and soon to be available psychedelic medical therapies that can help patients with a lot of difficult to treat conditions. So again, that is psychedelicmedicineassociation.org. We hope to see you there. All right, now without further ado. So welcome to part 3 of this chat, where in part 2, we were talking a lot about some very specific things. We're talking about, okay, antidepressants and how they interact with psychedelics and how you taper them and what kinds of interactions, medicines you can and can't be on if you're going to go different and do different types of journeys. And then also we talked about safe and less safe use of these medicines, which brings up a very important point, which is that, as you said, if you're going to taper antidepressants, you need to be working with somebody. If you're going to be microdosing, you need to be working with somebody. Who are these people that we're working with, and how do we make sure that we're working with the right people? So I would love it if you could get into this conversation with us and the kinds of things that you've been thinking about in this arena.
Well, the first thing I will say is it's very tricky because right now I would say we have more people who need mentors and supervisors than we have these sort of clinicians. there are lots of people who are trying to get up to speed, right? We, witness all the sort of therapist training protocols that are around, and all these different places that you can go to get educated. Um, there's like Fluence and CIIS, and MAPS has a training, and USONA has a training, Compass has a training. There are websites now where you can go on to see all the different choices of training. There's a lot of information out there. Um, but and we've got these underground therapists who've been out here for decades, right? They've been doing it. They're already doing it. And one of my big questions is, do they get grandfathered in? Like, do they have to take these courses? Can they just take an exam? Can they just prove, that they've actually been doing this for decades? I mean, it's really tricky. And who is going to be certifying these people? And what are they going to base a certification on? And I have way more questions than I have answers about this stuff. I understand that there are some people that are trying to create sort of a governing body, because I think, one of the things we have to look at, what is the training? And then the bigger issue of like, who's been through the training, and now you're safe to work with people, who's going to make that determination? But then more importantly for me is the people who aren't doing a good job, the people who are, sort of egregiously transgressing boundaries. What do we do with them? Will there be a governing body that you can report to? There's a shaman who's behaving badly in this sector, and they need to be taken out, or they need to be remediated, or punished, or educated, or publicly flogged, or something. So we definitely are hearing every once in a while about a few players here and there. Unfortunately, there seem to be more of these bad apples in the 5-MeO sort of toad medicine space than in the other spaces. I'm not too sure what to make of that. I mean, it is, the toad medicine is pretty potent, and it's kind of yang oriented, and I think that there are some like very yang heavy players. I think that it is really important to balance the yin and yang energy within a person, and then between you and the client, whoever you're working with. And it may be that there's just like a whole lot of yang energy going on in some of these 5-MeO situations. But we know that there are some bad actors. We know that there are some therapists who are having sexual violations with their clients. In the fields of psychology, psychotherapy, psychiatry, we're not supposed to touch each other. There's really not supposed to be any physical touch. And, I have a couple of patients that pre-COVID, they needed a hug, and I would give them a hug. But the truth is, I'm not even supposed to hug them, So I'm breaking the rules there to a little extent. I mean, they want to be hugged. They're asking me to hug them. There's certainly consent. There are things going on between people where there wasn't consent, or there was consent, but you could make a case that, well, given the drugs that person was taking, they really, they can't consent fully. They don't really have the capacity to fully consent. These are like, ethical issues that really need to be worked out. We know that there have been instances of really clear violations, and sometimes there's civil cases. There very rarely are there criminal prosecutions going on, but sometimes it sounds like there really should be. So I think part of it, honestly, is that it's such a new world and a new industry, and we don't want anything bad to like shut it all down. Like, everybody's so worried about the way that things got out of control with Leary, and everything got shut down, and he's like a total scapegoat. But the bottom line is, things really did get shut down, and there was a lot of research going on, and then there wasn't. And we've made tremendous strides over the last 30 years to get the research up and running, and to get things very buttoned up and respectable. And so I think part of it is just this fear, that if we admit that there are some bad actors, that the whole kind of house of cards is going to fall. But I would argue that it's not really a house of cards anymore. We are coming up on FDA approval of MDMA and psilocybin, and we really are in a place now where we have to sort of erect the structures. What are the rules? Who decides whether you're following the rules or not? What is the penalty if you are not following the rules? you can't take away somebody's certificate to practice if they don't have a certificate, so we really do have to build a lot of infrastructure around this. And it's in really early stages of people just kind of talking about it and figuring out, what do we need here?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you're right that we were at that point for a long time. Even in my own podcast, I didn't do a dark side of any medicine until it released today. So I'm 81 episodes in because I wanted to be like, okay, if we're introducing you, we don't want to scare you away instantly. But now it's time to address some of these. But I think we're at the point, like you said, that with this massive boom, that it's going to be more dangerous if we don't have safeguards in place than to admit that every once in a while something bad happens. I think it's safer at this point to admit that something bad can happen with your psychiatrist, but there's a governing board in place to take care of
Yeah,
that if that happens. And I
right.
think that's the kind of, with all the money and pharma and whatever that's pouring in, like more eyes are going to be on it. And they're going to say, who's regulating this? Nobody's keeping
Right. No,
anybody
they're
accountable.
definitely right. We can't all be on the honor system, um, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean that is one of the things that needs to happen. And then there's this sort of other issue, which is um, people behaving badly, maybe not shamans behaving badly, but like CEOs behaving badly, sort of. Um, where the lefty libertarian in me just kind of wants everybody to get along um, and share their toys, but just because of the way capitalism is, um, there's IP, there's proprietary information, there's sort of anti-competitive behavior. That to me also really needs to be addressed. Um, but that's even harder because they're not really breaking any rules. The truth is that they're playing by the rules, the sort of the old rules, with poverty mind and selfishness and not helping each other. Um, anyway, I just sort of lament that the capitalist greed ethos that is sort of creeping into the psychedelic community. It's really hard to stomach.
Yeah, understandable. And so if somebody's coming into this world and they're newer and they hear things like we're talking about is okay, you're going to you're potentially going to be experiencing something with a mind altering, life altering experience. We want to make sure that, at this point we can't necessarily do anything about the people CEO level, but we can discuss with you at this point what kind of people you're interacting with for your therapy. What are some guidelines? For example, if a patient comes to you and you do not yourself administer like ayahuasca, right? And so they may be asking, how do I know, or what are some things to look for? Because like some of the things that we've discussed on this podcast before is if I'm going to send somebody to a therapist, I want to make sure that that therapist is trauma informed and has some more modalities and that they have at least a baseline knowledge of the medication so that they're doing a medical history and we know that they're being safe medically. So what kinds of things do you advise patients on when they're going to go somewhere outside of you for one of these types
Right.
of therapies?
Well, what's good in my situation is I'm the medical person, right? I'm the medical monitor. I'm the doctor. I am like, okay, if you are going to do this, you can't be on this. This would be safer. This would be less safe. So I'm already taking care of a certain amount of safety, but also I can't refer them anywhere except to research, right? I mean, the only legal way right now, I mean, I'm in New York, right? I'm not in Oakland or Denver, one of these places where you can sort of get away with using plant medicines, because they're decriminalized. um, I can't make any of those real referrals. So I do refer people for ketamine, especially if they want to stay within the confines of the law, right? I mean, they can always have ketamine sessions, and that's a way to sort of get used to this idea of a catalyst helping you through therapy. So, I mean, I prefer ketamine assisted psychotherapy as opposed to just, you lying there with a needle in your arm for 45 minutes, then you leave. Um, but so I mean, it's a very particular time right now where people want something, but it's not yet legal. So there are underground therapists. There's research that I can refer people to, or I can refer them to ketamine, or I can say, hopefully you can find an ayahuasca circle that seems like a good fit for you. And like the truth is that I know for a lot of people when they do go to ayahuasca circles or go away for the weekend, have ayahuasca or something, there are um, there is paperwork for them to fill out. They do talk to somebody about what meds they're on or not, or what to expect or things like that. They are informed about the diet and what not to eat. Um, more often than not, things seem to go well. But there is, we're definitely in this gray area right now where like those things are not legal, and I can't do them, and I can't even really refer anybody to there. So it is a frustrating phase to be in because there is way more demand than supply.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had naively in the past suggested everybody please discuss your psychedelic use with your physician for this reason, because then we at least somebody is a medical monitor, right? But then
Right.
somebody brought up to me, not everybody, that's a privileged statement to make, because there's going to be repercussions for different communities if they bring up their, let's say, quote unquote, drug use. And so
Right.
at this point, I wish I had a way to safely tell people how to find somebody that they can, let's safely speak with on a medical basis, without putting themselves in harm's way. But I'm not sure if that exists at this
I
point.
know it would, there isn't, you can't sort of legally set up as, I'm going to be a consultant and, let me know what you want and where you want and what you're doing and I'll advise you. And like, you can't really do that right now, but there will come a time where that is absolutely going to be a job, as somebody's going to be clearing people for psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And they're going to be, and you're going to find out if somebody's got a history of psychosis or if, if they have bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or schizoaffective, and you would say, I really don't think this is right for you, or not yet, or something, or you're gonna find out somebody's on a medicine like, oh, well, that's incompatible with ayahuasca, but you could still have ketamine, I mean, that will be a job. Right now, that's just not, it's not a legal job.
Right. And like you pointed
So, but
out,
anyway, but your point is that not everybody can tell their doctor the truth, which is so true, right? Um, and not everybody has a doctor.
right, that too. Yeah, and so these are further issues that, like, as we're looking, those of us who want psychedelics to be medicines, we don't want psychedelics to be medicines for the privileged. We want this to be available to everybody. And so these are all these further questions that we have to keep in mind as we're, digging through this whole, like you said, drawing back to episode 1 and 2, like this connectedness. We all need to be in this together, and so we have to find solutions down the road that are helping everybody safely get access and being able to have these conversations more openly. And so I really appreciate everything you've shared with us, and helping to start, maybe this gets some people thinking in different ways about these solutions for themselves and in their communities. And because I want to be respectful of your time, I'd love to ask you if there's anything. And so for those of you who maybe just listened to episode 3, episode 1, we talked about some of the like the neurochemistry of connection and how psychedelics interact with that. Episode 2, we talked about tapering off antidepressants and how that it can be something necessary for psychedelics and how patients can do that more successfully. And then anything else that we've left off, because this has been an absolute joy for me. I could probably ask you 17 hours of questions, but like I just greatly appreciate this three episode series that we've been able to do. So if I've left anything off, please let
I
me
guess
know.
the only other thing I want to say is that, my partner Jeremy and I have been talking a lot about how to get along and stay married and stay together and things like that, and just knowing when you are in fight or flight and when you are in the other side. The opposite of fight or flight is like connect and protect, or tend and befriend. What I learned in medical school was that the parasympathetic nervous system was about rest, digest, and repair. So when you're in fight or flight, you can't sleep. You are not very good at digesting your food. Your metabolism is a mess. Your immune system is a mess. It's a pro-inflammatory state. But the other thing when you're in fight or flight is your social skills are just shit. So the rest and digest and repair, it's also about repairing your social ruptures. That you can really only do that when you're in the parasympathetic state. So it's important to just be in touch enough with your body to know when you're kind of riled up and you're in fight or flight. Your heart rate is up, your breathing is up. Usually you're breathing through your mouth and not your nose. If you want to calm yourself down and slow your heart rate and lower your blood pressure, you want to breathe in and out through your nose, stay calm, um, connect with your partner, eye to eye, face to face, give them the benefit of the doubt. But keep in mind that we have the capacity to mutually regulate each other. The longer you're in a relationship with somebody, like I know exactly what I can say to make Jeremy's blood pressure go up. And I also know what I can say to calm him. And, that's a real gift that you have the capacity to affect another person's physiology. So just, try to use it for good and not evil. And it's nice if you can find somebody and, sort of have a pact that you're gonna be therapeutic for each other. Any interaction, there's a choice of harm, being hurtful or helpful. And it's a choice every day. And it's the same thing with yourself, that you know how to calm yourself. You know what to say to yourself to make yourself feel better. With any given interaction where you're talking to yourself, you have the potential to be harmful or helpful. And, choose good over evil.
I love that. I have to be honest. In chapter one, I spend 90% of my day just trying to keep myself in parasympathetic state. I do the breath work and I do all the things. So I love that there was all that focus on how to get into parasympathetic and all the reasons why. It's like you just said, social interactions are much more difficult if I'm fight or flighting and I can feel that my heart rate is up. And so I could
Yeah.
interview you for an entire hour just on the parasympathetic nervous system. If this weren't a psychedelics podcast, I totally would. But I'm very thrilled that you stuck that in there at the end. Also, people should go back and listen to episode one if they haven't, because we talk much more about these neurochemistry things. But I
Yeah.
think that so many of the things we've discussed along the way, especially in part two, the disconnection and depression and addiction, all of that's made worse when you can't connect, and you can't connect very well if you're in fight or flight.
Right. All of it is worse when you're in fight or flight. And you're going to feel more of a need to soothe yourself and medicate yourself if you're in fight or flight. So the first thing to do is to keep yourself in parasympathetic, because the push to soothe yourself will be so much less if you're already in parasympathetic.
Yeah, totally. And I can feel it for myself. I can see it in others, in my ability to connect and their ability to connect. And I appreciate you bringing that up with your husband, because also, if those of you who don't follow Julie on Facebook, but she and her family have a band and they play music together every single day of the pandemic. I think you just celebrated 365 days yesterday.
We did. We did. Just yesterday was a year that we've been posting a song a day to Facebook. Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And,
amazing.
music puts you in parasympathetic.
Yeah.
And making music with somebody is talk about mutual co-regulation. You can really just see it, getting somebody into your rhythm. But yeah, music is a great way to soothe yourself.
Yeah, and fun. And I can just, like, when I see you guys, I'm like, think about how many activities neurochemically are happening. There's bonding, there's oxytocin, you're getting into parasympathetic. Like, I just admire what you guys have been able to do, and that's a lot of work. So thank you for bringing us 365 days of very cool songs, and thank you.
Absolutely our pleasure.
Oh, it's been so much fun. And Dr. Holland, can you tell people where to find you and your books and more information?
Well, my website, like drholland.com, or yeah, I mean, the truth is, if you Google Julie Ecstasy, you'll find me. It's really easy to find me. Uh, I've got one website that answers to a lot of different addresses: naturalmood.com, moodybitches.com, thepopbook.com, weekendsatbellevue.com. It all takes you to the website, which uh I think not Good Chemistry, though. I don't think I got that site. Anyway, my most recent book is Good Chemistry. The one before that is Moody Bitches. The one before that is Weekends at Bellevue, which was a memoir about my 9 years at the Psych ER at Bellevue, which was a fabulous fun time and a really good read if you like memoirs. And then two nonprofit books where all proceeds fund research is the Ecstasy book and the Pop book.
Nice. Well,
That's all I have to say.
that's amazing. I have the pot book. I got it from MAPS it was one of their gifts for donors, and I was like, yes, because I work in cannabis and I was ready to learn everything you had to tell us about it. So, thank you for your decades of work. Just personally, an MD who had to do psychedelics in silence for years, but the fact that you've been out for decades about cannabis and psychedelics, and charging forward on this publicly, is just an inspiration to me, and hopefully to everybody who comes after, to have the courage to be out about our use and the benefits of these medicines. So thank you on a personal level, and thank you for all the listeners for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge with us.
That is very kind of you, and you are very, very welcome. It has absolutely always been my pleasure. So I will continue. That's one of the benefits of not working at Bellevue anymore and not being affiliated with NYU anymore, is that I really can be as out and open as I want to be, and that's I'm lucky. Not everybody has not everybody has that freedom. So I appreciate that not everybody can out themselves. But I will say anyone who can out themselves should, because it will move this whole thing along a lot more. If you are a soccer mom who also, microdoses, like put that bumper sticker on your car. we, the more people can out themselves, the faster things will move in the right direction.
I'm gonna see if I can find somebody to make microdosing soccer mom bumper stickers. So we can, there's our new fundraising
Right.
idea for MAPS.
Yeah. And I vote, you want
And
to say.
yes,
I
yes.
microdose and
I
I vote.
vote.
Right?
That's so
Right.
good. Amazing. Thank you again, Dr. Holland, for being on.
You're very welcome, Dr. Morsky. All right, back to work.
All right. For everybody else out there, until next time. Thanks so much for listening to the Plant Medicine Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please leave us an iTunes rating or review. It helps other people find the show. And if you'd like to find out more about plant medicine, including the show notes from today's episode, please head over to plantmedicine.org. The music for the Plant Medicine Podcast is by the incredible Porangi. If you'd like to check out his music, please find him at porangi.com or on social media at PORANGUI.